Hello, my name's Ron. Today we're going to be looking at doing some character concept art, and I'm going to be using a Wacom tablet today, which is a digital graphics tablet. Feel free to use pencil and paper if that's what you've got at home, but if you're interested, do some research on graphics tablets because you can draw straight into the computer, and they're also becoming an industry standard. So what is concept art? I've done a bit of a Google search here, and you can see from my image on the screen that character concept art normally involves the drawing of a character in different poses. Now, why would you want to do that? And different views. Now, why would you want to do that? Because it can inform artists around you and production staff of what a character is going to look like, and everyone can sign off on that idea very quickly. It also allows you to draw multiple costumes. Once you've decided on a particular look for a character, you can get stuck into the details and draw lots and lots of costumes for your characters, and modelers would then take that and start creating. It's a very quick and cheap method of deciding on what you're going to produce, whereas if you can imagine, if you were to start modeling without doing concept art, you might spend hours and hours doing a model, then come back and people say, well, that's not quite what we want to do. So a drawing is a great way of informing everyone very quickly. So we're going to be concentrating on drawing some concept art today using two different methods. One, I'm going to show you how to very quickly get up a character in 2D, and then we're also going to come back to another method using 3D. So here we go. Here's some examples of what we call a blueprint. We normally have a 3/4 view of our character and then a front and a side. This is something that people can look at very quickly and decide that's what they want to do. Here's a female character. Here's a male character. You'll see that on both of these drawings we've got a head measurement. This is something that's used quite often, and you should do some research on anatomy and proportion, because as an artist you'll want to develop those skills. So here's some sketches I've done earlier. Obviously a male and a female. The female is probably around 7.5 heads tall of her own head size, and that's the same for the male. You can see the proportions are slightly different. Now I've got my Wacom pen going at the moment, and you can see that these characters are mainly constructed out of circles and ellipses and cylinders, and well, that's what you're going to want to use today. So let's go ahead and draw a female. It's a good idea to pull up some reference of what a female looks like to get her proportions. I've done a bit of a Google search earlier on female proportions. You should do the same, or male proportions. You should do the same. Inform yourself with some research. It's a great learning process. Everyone should do that. And this is how I'm going to go about it. So let's get started. First things first, I'm going to draw a center line. I've grabbed a brush out of Photoshop. They've got a few standard brushes. I'm not going to go into making your own brushes today, but I've got one here I like to call 2B pencil. Let's have a look at it. It's got some touch sensitivity. It's got a little bit of grain to it. It's a good brush, so that's what I'm going to be using. First things first is I like to draw a center line. Holding down Shift creates a center line. So you hold down Shift and just draw a line. I also like to put in like where I think the ground plane might be. Okay, now we're going to be kind of rough here. I'm going to start using some ellipses and circles. So I'm going to just roughly judge that I want my female's head to be about here, starting at the top of my line. Pulling her chin in so it's not too broad. Females have got generally finer details than men. Start with the neck, and then I start to work in what I call a clavicle. And then I like to put in a ball shape for the chest area, and then some small circles for some shoulders. We're letting our clavicle line there kind of guide us on everything being fairly parallel. Now don't be too precious here. Now we're going to come down for a bit of a tighter waist off our circle, and then into the hip region. I'm going to go a little rounder here because females have got hips Now you can see here I've already blown my scale, so edit, transform, I'm going to make everything a little smaller again so it will fit. My ground plane will probably have to come down a bit. Okay, so there. I'm going to do some legs now, using an ellipse type shape. Great thing about these shapes is they imply volume, which is what we all have. We all got lots of volume because we're three-dimensional. Put some kneecaps in, coming down with another ellipse type shape for the legs, and then some triangles for the feet. I'm just going to turn her foot out a little bit on this one. You can see it's very rough because we will tighten everything up later. Now we put some arms in. Now her hands should fall just below her hips, somewhere around there. Let's do some simple hands for now. And maybe this one maybe we'll kind of kick it out a bit. Another cylinder. And imply some fingers. So the whole time I'm looking at this, I'm looking at my proportions and saying, you know, are they close? Are they right? Throw in a bit of hair. Some more feminine attributes. Sitting on the lower part of that circle. There we have it. Very, very quickly we've drawn ourselves a very quick female character. Now let's just check those proportions very, very quickly. So I'm just going to draw a head shape based off my head shape. I've just created another layer to do that. Now the rules are you've got to go in and do this research for yourself, but there are really no rules. But if you're trying to create something that's quite realistic, you want to go in and do some research proportion. Basically, your head shape governs a lot of things. Normally, the chest of a female and a male will be roughly 2 head shapes wide. Now, she should be roughly, what, 7 tall, I said? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a bit. That's probably pretty good. That's not too bad. Now, there's going to be all these other shapes in here that are going to define, will be defined by a head shape. So go in and do some research about that. It's really very interesting. So that's one method. Okay, I'm just going to save that. Call that female proportion. PSD, save. Okay, so that was that method where we used lots of shapes. What do we use? We used circles. We used ellipses. We also did use some cylinders, okay? And that's pretty much all the shapes we used to come up with our character, okay? Now I'm going to show you the 3D method. So we've moved over to 3D Studio Max. I'm just putting down my Wacom pen and going back to my trusty mouse. And you can see I've constructed out of boxes a male shape. Now what's really, really handy about this is it's very, very rough, it's very easy, it's very quick to do. I'll give you a very quick tour of how I did it. What's good about this method is if you're not very confident with drawing, you can just create shapes in 3D, especially if that's your strong suit. But you still need to go and do some research about proportions, which is probably the underlying message for today, is that if you want to draw realistic type characters, you're going to have to do some research on what characters look like. But you can see here I've pretty much done something like this. I've created these shapes very, very quickly. You can see how quickly this is taking. This is nothing. Making his arms. There you go. So you can see how quickly that character was constructed. What we're going to do now is we're going to take some screen grabs of this guy. We're going to use it to draw over. So you can imagine if you had a very, very rough pose and you're happy with these proportions, you could go front, side, you know, 3/4, rear view. You could very, very quickly draw a fairly accurate character for yourself. So anyway, I'm just going to basically get like a front view. This is our front view. And I'm going to get a screen grab. I'm going to use a thing called the snip tool. Snip tool comes with Windows. If you go into your program section here and type in snip, you'll find the snipping tool. It's a really cool thing. So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, come back to Photoshop, File, New, sure, Control V. So there he is there. I'm just going to remove the grey background, and I might just increase, I might actually put it onto a new canvas. Go international paper. I like A4 just to begin with. That's the kind of paper you'll be using if you're going traditional, probably. Some printer paper. Okay, so we've got our front view that we've taken from 3D Studio Max. Scaling it up. Now, a lot of this is going to be driven by the proportions that you've created. I like to drop the opacity a little bit, and then I create another layer on top, and then I just start drawing. Spacebar to move around the canvas. It's also nice sometimes to go full screen. Now I can move it anywhere I want using the spacebar. Very, very handy. Grab my pen tool and I start drawing. Now, because I've used squares for speed, I'm going to have to start making things a little bit more organic. So let's go. So building off those shapes that we've got. Start using ellipses again, but you can see a lot of the proportion work has been done in 3D. All I have to do now is just concentrate on drawing some simple shapes. I can already tell my proportions are a little bit out, but like we said, something we've got to constantly practice if we want to become good artists. Throw in a bit of a clavicle there, head shape. Now if I really wanted to, I could just draw the left half of his body and flip it. Edit, transform, flip horizontally, and there we go. We've pretty much created a character off the bat. Well, the building blocks for a character anyway. There we go. Very easy, very quick. So there you go, there's two methods. I'm going to save that one, call that Male 3D.